This is Henry Washington, and you're listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you're listening to our podcast, go leave us a 5-star review. All of our links can be found in the video description or show notes below.
Hey, welcome back to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cavagioni, and today's awesome guest is Dan Daly. We had a great conversation before I hit record. I'm super excited to have you on. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me. I was mentioning in our earlier conversation, I've learned tons from you in the podcast over the years. So thank you for having me. And thanks for sharing so much of your information over the last bunch of years.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. Dan shared with me, he's been listening to this podcast since 2021. And that just made me feel so good. And things like that make me do what I do and why we have this podcast. I think it's just awesome to hear that and get that kind of feedback. Dan, enough about that. You're on this show now, and we want to know more about you. So if you could, can you share a little bit about yourself? Tell us your story. Who is Dan Daly?
So I grew up very blue collar, very humble beginnings in the suburbs outside of New York City, and graduated high school. And I was one of those people at 17, 18 years old. Everybody was asking me, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? And it's a big question. And I had no idea. I didn't know what I wanted to do on Tuesday, never mind the rest of my life. It was just figuring out my way. And my dad was nice enough to say, listen, I can get you into the local blue collar union here. You'll have a job, you'll have benefits until you figure out what it is you really want to do. I said, yep, all right, sure, Pop, no problem. And he got me into the local janitors union in the local public high school system. It wasn't an easy gig, that's for sure. And in the beginning, I was on the midnight shift. So 10 at night till 6 or 7 in the morning. And I was there for a couple of months. And one day, one of the old timers came up to me and he said, listen, you're a lifer now. You know that, right? I didn't know what the term meant. I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you're here for the rest of your life now. And Mike, I have goosebumps right now, still telling the story as if it was happening to me that very day. That was it. A day or two later, I quit. And my pop was obviously not happy because he pulled a lot of strings to help me out. He said, great, what are you going to do now? And I said, I don't know, Pop, but I'm not going to do that. A friend of mine was running a automotive dealership in northern New Jersey. And he said, listen, why don't you're passionate about cars. You're great with people. Why don't you come sell cars? And I said, dude, I'm not a car salesman. I was insulted by the offer. Long story short, and 20 years later, I made a very successful career in the automotive business. And I started at the bottom. I started in sales and I worked my way up from salesperson to finance manager, sales manager, general sales manager to general manager. I was one of the youngest general managers in the country at the time and had a successful career doing that. And about 6 years ago or so, to fast forward a little bit, I had a local LA real estate person who was wanting to get into the automotive dealership business. And we had a conversation. He said, listen, why don't you come work with me? I'm going to start buying some automotive dealerships, I think, and you're the guy I want focused on running them. And he had this little tiny dealership, and it was literally 10 or 15 cars in stock with a half a dozen employees, and they were operating out of a mobile home. That was the first dealership, and that was the beginning of the company. And he said, listen, I don't know if this is going to be a hobby or is it going to be a real business? And I said, oh, no, if you want to put some horsepower behind this, like we could really blow it up and make this a business. 5.5 years later, we had 7 stores, 8 stores, 9 stores, 500 employees, and 600-700 million a year in revenue from nothing, right? And ran around with my hair on fire for 5 years, helping him build that. And it was a great learning experience and a really rewarding experience. And during that time, over the last 3 or 4 years, I started getting into real estate. And the first year or so, Mike, I just sat on the sidelines, listened to podcasts like yours, learning about it. In the beginning, I wasn't sure, do I want to get into single family rentals, multifamily, commercial, industrial? I literally knew nothing about real estate. And eventually I narrowed it down and I started focusing on Europe, believe it or not. Lower interest rates, less competition, easier barrier to entry. And in the last 3 years, developed a really good size short-term rental Airbnb portfolio in Europe, which now we're taking that to the next level and launching a private equity golden visa fund that will focus just on hospitality real estate. So I have had a busy last 5 or 6 years, but I was late to the game. I'm 54 years old. I didn't really start in the real estate game until 2022, really. So never too late to get in the game.
Yeah, definitely not. So Dan, what an amazing background. I'm sitting here jotting down notes as you're going. And what a story, just starting off in that union job as a janitor, and how it's funny how different conversations change your life in different ways, right? So you have a conversation with somebody that basically telling you like, hey, yeah, man, you're going to be doing this the rest of your life. And you're like, hell no, I'm not. I'm getting out of here. And yeah,
Yep.
disappointing dads never feels good, but sometimes you have to do what's best for you in your chapter in life, in your story that you're writing. But yeah, then getting into auto sales, right? And working your way up all the way from a salesperson all the way up to the general manager. Obviously you did really well because you caught the attention of this real estate investor that was buying dealerships. And then again, another conversation that changed your life in a different way. You had a conversation with them. Next thing you're partnering with them and taking down these dealerships. That's amazing, man. That's awesome. I think that's one of those things.
I appreciate
would
that.
it be safe to say that's what kind of scratched the itch and said, I think I like real estate, when you started noticing that he was buying these dealerships?
Oh yeah, that was it. That was it. Back when I was selling cars back east, I started making some pretty good money relative to what I was used to early on. And somebody said, "Oh, you got to buy a house. You got to buy a house." I didn't have a ton of money. I borrowed a couple of bucks from my parents actually for a down payment, and I bought the smallest, cheapest house in the best neighborhood. And I lived in it for a dozen years, and then it's been a long-term rental since then. So I still own that property. But I was so caught up in automotive for years, focused on that I didn't really get the real estate itch until I started figuring out, what do I want to do when I'm done with automotive? And I remember, Mike, all the guys when I was coming up selling cars, and I was fortunate enough to sell some really good brands, BMW, Rolls-Royce, Lamborghini, Bugatti, all the big end brands. And I used to ask the guys that were driving those cars, once I got to know them well enough, what is it that you do, if you don't mind me asking? 99% of them said real estate, right? So when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, I remembered those conversations and still talked to a couple of the customers and said, listen, I'm interested in getting into real estate. What are some recommendations? And then that was it. I got the bug once I started learning and narrowing down my focus for what was going to be my niche that I was going to invest in. Because it's overwhelming in the beginning. Again, commercial, industrial, short-term, single family, you're all over the map, right? Until you really figure out what you want to do and why. And then that was it. I was laser focused. I think we bought 4 properties alone in 1 year. That's like on fire. In Europe, from here in Los Angeles on a laptop.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're doing all of this sight unseen. You didn't take a trip out there.
I've been to Europe a bunch of times, but no, I didn't inspect any of the properties in person, and you don't really need to. So I had engineers go in and look at the structural, plumbing, electrical, roofing, flooring, outlets, all of that jazz. I've got attorneys and tax lawyers that are there that help us with that, bookkeepers, property management companies. And then you develop a relationship with 1 or 2 brokers that you like and you trust, and you do a video walkthrough just like this. All of our portfolio consists of 2-bedroom apartments, so they're very easy to analyze and inspect quickly. You're not looking at a 50-unit multifamily unit or a big 100,000 square foot industrial unit. So it made it a lot easier to do it remotely. And knock on wood, they're all almost 5-star ratings for the last 3 years. They're booked 98, 99% of the time, and just kicking off cash flow every day.
Yeah, you can't complain about that at all. And actually,
and the mortgage rates, let me tell you, for the real estate listeners that you have, like mortgage rates in Europe, right? We were able to partner with a bank. You look at the US here, right? It's 7%, basically, call it. Where in Europe, every mortgage I have is 20, 25 years, and they're all sub 4% still.
Wow.
Lower interest rates. You can buy a 1,000 square foot apartment there for $300,000 that here in California is $1.3 million. So it was just, why would I ever even think about focusing here? let me focus in an area where there's less competition and lower interest rates. And that was my edge.
Yeah, that's an attention grabber for sure. As soon as you mentioned the lower interest rates, I'm sure people that are listening to this episode are like, oh, their ears just perked up. Hey, wait, what? Sub 4%? That's really amazing, Dan. And I think one of the things that really stands out to me is that when you discovered investing in Europe, like actually, that's what I want to ask you. What made you even think to look at Europe versus, investing anywhere else in the United States? Like a lot of people, especially if you live in high cost areas like LA or like where I live on Oahu, a lot of people look everywhere else in the United States to invest. I don't ever hear people talking about looking at Europe. So what made you say, I'm going to look at Europe and see what I can get out there?
Yeah, it was two big things, right? So number one was I was looking for secondary and tertiary markets in the United States. So I wouldn't look in Los Angeles, but I'd look in Cleveland, Ohio, or I'd look in Rochester, New York, and I would send in a lead to the broker, and it would be 3, 5, 7 days a week before somebody got back to me. Sorry, we had 200 leads on that property. I'm not interested in fighting with 200 people for anything. So I started to see that as I hopped from market to market, everybody's looking at the same leads, unless you have that inside track for off-market deals, which I didn't as a newbie. So I was getting frustrated. I was like, this is for the birds. This is really a lot of brain damage, spending all your time and energy looking for these places, and then everybody's trying to go after the same unit. Then I came across another podcast, which was really about lifestyle investing and just the philosophy of investing in something that you're passionate about. So multifamily units or European lifestyle short-term rentals. I have zero interest in owning a multifamily unit in the United States. I just don't. It doesn't get me up in the morning. It doesn't keep me up at night. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it. It just, for me, I wasn't passionate about it. And I'm the type of personality where if I'm not passionate about something, I'm just moving on to something else. So that really resonated with me. And I started reading a lot about it, learning a lot about it. And most people go, oh my God, that's impossible. How did you ever do that? It's really not that hard if you know what to look for, how to look for it, and to build that network. Now, in the beginning, don't get me wrong, a lot of phone calls, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning with the different time zones. I went through several property management companies, several accountants, several attorneys, but so does everybody else here in the United States, right? It wasn't much different than the United States. And again, lower interest rates, and you do the math, 3.9% versus 6.9% for 25 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So much cheaper point for entry, and there's not a lot of competition going for those units. So I might send in a lead on a unit in Portugal, and within 20 minutes, the broker is calling me back. So the light bulb went on. I was like, oh, this is interesting. There's less competition, so I'm getting good looks at good deals, and I'm not competing with 100 different people, and lower interest rates. Like, I'm in, and I focused on it, committed to it. And again, 2022 or 2023, we bought 4 units in that 1 year, just kept hitting them one after the other.
Nice. And I could definitely see that because in that time frame, especially when you started out looking at those in 2022, the market in the United States, it didn't matter where you were looking. It is exactly what you were talking about. A property hit the market and there's 200 people inquiring about it. Like, that is not even a joke. So yeah, totally understand that. But as you expand, you buy more of these properties over in Europe, have you run into any roadblocks when it comes to like specific local rules or laws? Because I know a lot of people in that space, like in the Airbnb, VRBO space, run into those issues, even stateside. So what does that look like in other countries?
I would say it's exactly the same, right? I was looking at some units early on in Nashville, Tennessee, and it seemed every 90 days, somebody wanted to change the Airbnb rules. And over in Portugal, every 90 days, somebody wanted to change the Airbnb rules. Dollar for dollar, pound for pound, it's the same problem, but there's more reward over here. If you're getting into the Airbnb short-term rental market, you always need to be aware of the rules and regulations, and you need good people that understand it, advising you on it. Attorneys and tax accountants. They are really plugged into the Airbnb rules and regulations. It really wasn't that much different than you find here in a lot of different US cities. They're changing the rules constantly, but if you dot the I's, you cross the T's, you get your paperwork, I'll give you an example that really benefited us. We were on fast forward, acquiring a lot of these properties. We acquired them, got the proper licensing. Within, I'm going to tell you, after our last property closed, 2 or 3 days, they changed immediately the Airbnb license. But I was in already. So now it eliminated even more competition for me because they're not issuing any more licenses. They put a pause on it for 12 months. That is the best news as an investor I could ever hear. I have something that nobody else can get and tourists want. I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, so that definitely worked out. Same problems, just in a different area, still just having to figure it out as it goes. I think one of those things, Dan, and I could say that with pretty much certainty that I could see with how you're handling yourself in those situations, that as an entrepreneur, you got to be able to flex when you need to flex, right? You need to be able to work around and figure out ways that are going to make the deals work for you and for your team. And obviously, you're making it work, right? I want to ask you something now, just in particular, like when it comes to figuring out what's a good deal in these European countries versus how we would look here. Like when you're not really familiar with a market you're going into, you were doing all this stuff sight unseen, right? So what was that like going into a market that you weren't really familiar with and trying to figure out what's a good deal? What's going to make this deal work where it'll be profitable and I'll be able to keep this property for years to come?
Yeah, that's a great question. I started with, what are the most heavily visited tourist cities? Let's just take Portugal, for instance. And it's Lisbon and Porto. It's a big country, but there's only 2 main cities that most of the tourists go to visit. All right, I'm looking at Lisbon and I'm looking at Porto, and that's my radius. And I start right in the center of the most heavily trafficked areas. So like the historical districts, right? The old churches, the old buildings, the old streets, the old art, history, culture. That's what all the tourists want to see. So if I can find a unit that's within walking distance, 1.5 miles, 2 miles from the epicenter of those 2 cities, if we use those as an example, I'm going to draw my circle around that dot and I'm going to look for every unit within there. I want to find something that's been refurbished already because I'm not going to start hiring general contractors. I'd rather pay a little bit more, have it be done, and not have to worry about it. But that was the dart on the dartboard for me to start looking, is where do most of the tourists go, and then draw a circle around that saying within a half-hour walk, where would I want to go? Where would I want to stay, and why would I want to stay there? Our units are on the main strip in the historic centers. You open up the windows, there's a balcony, you walk outside and you see all of Porto unfold right in front of you. Cafe downstairs, 1.5 blocks to the water. So right where all the sites are, where everybody wants to be, that's where you start. You'll pay more, and then you go out from there depending on your budget. What you don't want to do is go try and find a place, that you got a good price on that's 60 minutes away from the tourist center. Nobody is going to stay at your place. They're going to stay at the hotels. You're competing with the hotels. Where are the hotels? That's where I want to be.
Okay. Yeah, it's fair enough. Great strategy. And especially in a market you're not too familiar with, because investing for a lot of people can be very scary. It's probably even more terrifying if you're trying to do it in a country you're not familiar with, and especially if you've never set foot there, which you have, right? But when you were doing this from all the way back in LA saying, okay, I think this will work because we got this here, and you're looking at all the stuff that's around it. So those are all very important things. Those are the specific key indicators that you need to know that it's going to be successful, a successful short-term rental. And actually, I wanted to ask you, because those specific areas, there's a YouTube content creator that I've been following for a long time, or content creators. You ever watch Our Rich Journey on YouTube?
No.
Oh yeah, check them out. They actually moved.
No, I haven't heard of that one.
To Lisbon, but I think they also have a property in Porto. That channel has been pretty awesome. That actually lit the expat bug. So we've been talking about this for a while too. That's why I think it's funny that we're having this conversation. Like I told you before I hit record, I have been thinking about buying different Airbnbs in different cities in Europe, in places that I'd want to go stay, that I can just go block off the dates and take the family there, and we've got a place to stay every single time. And when we're not staying there, it's making me money. So I think that's awesome. And speaking of it, is that something that you do? You block off the time and say, hey, I'm going to take a trip and go stay in one of my Airbnbs?
You have to. It's part of enjoying it. That was the whole idea, was not to just rent something purely for the cash flow, but to rent something that I enjoy in a place that we like going to. And then when I'm not there, to have the cash flow. And that small portfolio that we have has been so successful, and we've had so many inquiries about it, that we're now launching a private equity fund that is going to be even bigger. It's right now, it has about a $50 million cap on it, and it's going to be Golden Visa eligible. If you're familiar with the Golden Visa in Portugal, what that is, Mike, is you invest 500,000 euros in a fund. The Portuguese government has certain approved funds, so our fund will be approved by the Portuguese government, and you invest that money for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, you get whatever your yield is on an annual basis from the fund. And then you get permanent residence for yourself, your spouse, and your children in Portugal, which gives you access to the entire European Union, which is, I think it's right now, it's about 20 different countries. So $500,000 investment is, you can't buy too much in the United States for 500,000. So now you're investing that in a private equity fund that owns hospitality related real estate, estates, and Airbnb short-term rentals. You get the yield on those. You get the 500,000 back at the end, plus your Golden Visa, permanent residence. It's a win-win. We've been able to take, again, that lifestyle investment. What do I want to do? Where do I want to be in 3 to 5 years? And how do I do something that other people like yourself would also be interested in doing, so that I take all of the legwork out of it for them? Here's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. We've got an established small short-term rental portfolio in Portugal. Now we're launching a much bigger fund with small hotels and estates. And it also gives you access to the Golden Visa in 5 years. So you and your whole family can go and move over there. Healthcare, schools, retirement, the whole 9 yards, you get everything. And then they allow you in 5 years after that to apply for citizenship. So it's an amazing program. The United States, just to show you quickly, I read this morning when I was looking at something, the United States is number 3 on the list of investors into Portugal. So there's 2 ahead of the United States, and then the biggest investors are United States. It's close to the East Coast. It's a 6-hour flight. The weather in Portugal is very similar to here in California. Again, more bang for the buck, better quality of life, schools, health system, retirement, you get all of it.
I was actually reading something too, like there's a lot of expats in Portugal, even to the point where it is not hard to find people that speak English anywhere you go over there. And even before that, even before there was such a huge influx, a lot of people there are bilingual, right? They speak English and Portuguese. That's not really a place that it's hard to get around. You can go to other countries, and a lot of times you have to deal with that language barrier. I think that's pretty awesome, because I've been following not only Our Rich Journey, but a couple other expat content creators, and a lot of people go to Portugal. Dan, is that specifically where you're focused, is just in Portugal, or are you looking to expand into other countries in the future, or working on that now? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, we've been working on that. We do already have a couple of different properties in different countries. We've got the units in Porto. There's an island off the coast of, it's really off the coast of Spain, called Madeira. It's like Europe's version of Hawaii. It's the number 1 beach destination for all of Europe. Madeira, we have units there. And there's another small country called Andorra. Andorra is like Monaco. It's a small independent country right in between Spain and France, and it's right in the Pyrenees. So it's more of, in the winter, it's ski season, and they get international skiers from all over the world. And in the spring and summer, it's big for hiking, mountain biking, cycling. A lot of professional cyclists and athletes live there. So we've been going across Europe, and we're going to keep going across Europe.
Awesome. I love to see the expansion, especially with what you're doing now, providing this opportunity for U.S. investors that may be interested in getting a Golden Visa or eventually moving, because there's a lot of instability throughout the entire world right now. But at the same time, a lot of people feel very uncertain with how things are going. And I've talked to quite a few people that are like, yeah, I'm thinking about being an expat. I'm thinking about moving overseas or doing this, that, or the other. I've been considering it too for a while. It's very interesting to see that there's still a way to do the things you love. And I think you touched on this previously, and I wrote it down. You need to do stuff that you're passionate about, right? So if you're passionate about real estate, there's still opportunity out there for you to continue doing that and doing it somewhere else. if that's something you've been considering. So
Tons of it. People
Yeah.
just need somebody to educate them a little bit on it. Yeah,
100%.
absolutely.
100%. And that's why you're on the show. Right
I'm
now,
taking the
Dan,
fear
educating
factor out
us.
of it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you
Awesome.
go. Taking the fear factor out of it. I jumped into the
Yeah.
deep end a little bit, but I laid the groundwork, and now we've got great accountants, attorneys, property managers, a really good network of people that we enjoy dealing with and we enjoy working with. And that's everything, right? You need that network to succeed. Buying the property is almost the easy part. You need people that you know and you trust on your team helping you. And we've got an amazing team of people that we've been working with for years there. So coming into something like the Golden Visa Fund, we've already got that track record of building something small, scaling it to doing something larger. And it's really plug and play. It's an investment. And I think the requirement is you've got to do 7 days a year. You need to stay in Portugal during that time you're applying for the Golden Visa. 7 days per year on average for the 5 years. Take a week vacation.
That's actually very reasonable. I know other places you have to be there much longer. I looked at the visa for Italy. I actually qualify for it because my grandparents immigrated from there. So I can actually get my visa through, there's a program there, but you actually want, I think you have to stay there for 90 days or something like that, or 6 months. No, I think you have to be there for 6 months before you can even apply.
I think it's 6 months in Italy. Portugal is the
That's
easiest
pretty awesome.
access to permanent residence. Yeah. It's an amazing opportunity. People just kind of write it off because they think it's just too impossible or too hard. And it isn't. It's actually the opposite. It's very easy. And I've done it already. So let me show you how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, I want to ask you this though, because this didn't just happen for you, right? Obviously, it took a lot of hard work. You learned a lot on your journey to get here. I want to rewind back a little bit because we talked a little bit about what you did before you got into real estate. And I want to touch on that a little bit more because I think part of your journey when you got into the automotive industry, from being a salesperson all the way up to the general manager, and then getting into that venture with your partner that was buying dealerships, there had to be some lessons learned throughout that process that you're able to apply to what you do today. And I'm curious to know, like, what are some of the big takeaways that you took from that venture to do what you're doing now?
I'll tell you, especially from this last stint here in Los Angeles, working on running these dealerships and building the group, make smart decisions, but make them slowly, right? Don't let anybody rush you. I don't like being rushed. If anybody's rushing me, all of a sudden the spidey sense goes up. I appreciate a sense of urgency, but there's a difference between squeezing someone for an answer and creating a sense of urgency, or just explaining what the urgency may be, because it may be legitimate. Listen, if this is the piece of property you're interested in, I just want to let you know we have 2 offers pending, no pressure. Get back to us when you're ready. That's a good message. So really taking your time, educate yourself, make an educated decision, gather all of your information, lay it out, make what you think is your decision, sleep on it, and see if you still feel the same way tomorrow. And that has saved me a whole bunch of times. And that's something I learned late in life. So that's something I take away from this last opportunity. And then the other big one is work with people you like. You could be the smartest Harvard grad and have a wall full of paperwork, but if when my phone rings, I'm like, I don't want to pick up the phone. I don't want to talk to this person. For whatever reason it is, sometimes people don't gel, and there's nothing wrong with that. So surround yourself with people you like, people you want to work with, and those 2 things compound into such immediate benefits I can't even begin to explain. It's a privilege, right? When your phone rings and goes, oh, it's Mike calling. I can't wait to see what he wants to talk about. Let's pick up the phone. You're on the phone for a half hour. My wife's like, come on, get off the phone. You're still talking to Mike. Those are the people I want around me. Those are the people I want to deal with. Those are the people I want to work with. Listen, life is short. Deal with people you like. Take your time making decisions. There's always going to be another property. There's always going to be another attorney. There's always going to be another accountant. Make a solid, slow decision. And then once you know what it is, act. For me, it's work.
Fantastic. I love that. Yeah, making slow decisions, but then taking action on them. I think that is super important, and makes me think about some of the decisions I've made in the past. If I would have really stopped and thought about it or slept on it, like you said, I probably would have made a different decision on certain things. And a lot of times in life, you do feel an overwhelming pressure when it comes to making a decision on certain things. A lot of times you're looking at the devil and the angel on your shoulder, and they're like, got nothing for you, boss. You got to sit down and really think
Yeah.
about that decision. A big takeaway is to, hey, stop, take a step back, evaluate, make sure it's the right decision for you, then jump. I love that. Yeah. Make smart decisions slowly. Don't rush. All right, Dan, I think
There's always another deal.
there will always be another deal. So I think that's a perfect segue
There's always another deal.
into the final round. It's where I'm going to ask you the same 4 questions
Sure.
I ask everybody that comes on the show. And it gives us a good idea of how you are under a little bit of pressure, but honestly, it's not that bad. So if you're ready to go, we'll get that party started.
Let's do it.
All right, Dan, these questions are a little bit more personal and you're tracking on that. And they're all interconnected. But I'm going to start off with this first one. And that is, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made in your finances or your business life?
Probably not getting into the game earlier. I missed the real estate 2008, which is not a bad thing, but a lot of people that were in it before then and knew what they were doing came back even stronger after. Yeah, right.
Oh, no,
So like,
I was
man,
in
you know, I
2007
just
and I was
wish.
like, "Whew." It was bad. It was rough.
But you're here now, right? So
I am,
it
yeah.
worked out, but it's always going to be rough, right? You're always going to hit a rough patch. But if that rough patch is 10% of the time and the other 90% of the time you got clean air and smooth sailing, sign me up. But sometimes we just focus on that 10% so much. So I think I probably would have liked to get in the game a little bit earlier. But that being said, I'm really happy where I am today too.
Yeah, smooth seas never made a strong sailor, by the way. That's why smooth sailing's great.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to weather the storm. You do. So, and hey, I retired from the Navy, so I got to throw in some type of nautical thing in there.
I like it. I like it.
All
My
right.
dad's a Navy guy, so I like it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Dan, this next question, and you're going to see that these, like I said, these tie into each other. And that is, what is something that you've learned that you wish you knew when you first started out?
I wish I knew how to trust my instinct better. You touched on it a little bit. If I went back, and I've done this before as an exercise, I went back one day and I looked at all the things that I thought were poor decisions I made in the last 20 years, the ones that really stuck out. And I just looked at them and deep dived into them. Was there a point in time before I made that decision where I knew it didn't really feel good, but I did it anyway? I'm really good now at paying attention to that spidey sense, right? But in the beginning, I wish I were better at it. And sometimes it just takes time and life knowledge, right? You just have to go through the course the way it takes you. But that's been a valuable tool for me, is listening to my instinct, trusting it. And it's what guides 99.9% of my decisions now, that before it didn't. Before I was younger, they were more emotional, they were ego-based, and they were the wrong decisions. So listening to my instincts better.
Yeah, that's fair. I love that you use spidey senses too, so Disney don't sue us. But I think that's one of those things that when you have a bad feeling about something, as Han Solo famously says, I've got a bad feeling about this. Sometimes you got to listen. You got to listen to those instincts or your gut feeling.
You always
saying,
better
hey,
listen.
This might not be the best thing to do at this point in time in your life. And maybe take a step back. And like you said earlier, don't rush. Make smart decisions slowly. And I think that's one of those things that you could take that away, man. And actually, speaking of takeaways and things you can learn, the next question is, do you have any tips or tricks that you would recommend to someone that is just getting started today?
Surround yourself with people that are doing what you want to do. So I got into the game really late. This is a true story. I got into the game really late, 49, 50 years old. And my dad wasn't in real estate. A lot of the people I was trying to learn from were second, third generation real estate guys. So they had their 10,000 hours by the time they were 22 years old because they were going around collecting rent checks with their dad. I didn't have that. I didn't know how to break into a networking group. I didn't know how to find people that were in the know. And I'm here in Beverly Hills and they have this local free newspaper. It's called the Beverly Hills Courier. Okay. And I took out a 2-inch by 2-inch ad in the classified section. This is 4 years ago and it still runs today. I took out an ad in the Beverly Hills Courier because it's going to some of the wealthiest people in the world. Forget about the United States, right? In the world, 500,000 people are on their distribution list. They get this on their doorstep every Friday. And it said, real estate mentor wanted, looking to learn from someone who's walked it. My phone rang the first Friday a dozen times by all these salty old dogs that have been in the game since 1970. And
Wow.
I'd meet them for coffee. I'd go to Starbucks. I'd meet them at a hotel lobby. Like, I couldn't figure out, Mike, how to break into it. But as a salesman, who's my target audience and what are they looking at? These were the older guys, right? That still read the newspaper. They're not on Instagram. They're not on LinkedIn. They're not on Twitter or X. So where are they? They're reading the Penny Saver. They're reading the Beverly Hills Courier. And I took out a 2-inch by 2-inch color ad, and it still runs today. It cost me $2,400 a year. I don't even want to tell you how much money I made from $2,400. The ROI is like this. So you think outside the box. I wasn't afraid to take a 2x2 ad for $2,400. As silly as it sounds, that's my target audience. That's what's going to reach them. And in the car business, we used to do the postcard mailers. And our average customer was 55 to 60 years old for some of our brands. They still read the mail. They still go out and collect the mail out of the mailbox. So know who your audience is and how are you going to get to them. For me, that was gold.
I think that is super important, Dan, because you don't, at least for me in particular, I don't ever really stop to think of, for my target audience, is that somebody that would actually open the letter if I send it to them? Or is that somebody I should email? And I think that's a question you should ask yourself, depending on who it is that you're trying to talk to. And that was perfect. Running that ad, next thing you know, your phone's blowing up. What a great investment for you, right? Because like you said, you had these salty dogs that have been doing the real estate game for a very long time. And now you're sitting across from them at a cafe, having a cup of coffee and getting information that probably costs them hundreds of thousands of dollars to obtain. And you're getting it by having a conversation. I think that's
it took them decades and lots of money.
Networking. What were you saying?
I agree. I wasn't getting calls from brokers. I was getting calls from calls from developers, people that helped develop Beverly Hills, Los Angeles in 1982, and they put 3,000 units up. These were the big dogs that if you were trying to get them on an email or LinkedIn or social media, like, you weren't ever getting an appointment with them. They read the newspaper. So I knew who my target audience was, coming from a really strong sales background. Who am I trying to hit and what's the best way to hit them?
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Dan. All right. And that's going to lead us into the final question of the final round. And that is, and this one's different than the rest, but that is, do you have a favorite business, investing, or real estate related book or podcast or both?
I'll tell you, I learned tons from your podcast, and I'm not saying that because I'm on. Before we even started recording, I shared with you how much I've learned from you and your guests. Another one of my favorite ones, Justin and Lifestyle Investing. I love that. I like reading the news, right? I like reading the headlines, and the headlines give me ideas about what's coming next that I want to invest in. So 2 years ago, it was AI, right? Everybody started, now everybody knows about it. But you think 2 years ago, you did not have ChatGPT on your laptop and you were not using it as part of your regular routine. In 24 months, you now are. So when I saw that 24 months ago, I started researching the AI related companies, who's involved, who has the technology, where would I want to put my money. 12 months ago, or maybe a little bit longer, was crypto, right? Which is now, you can't shake it. It's here forever. And 12 months ago, people still thought it was a Ponzi scheme. So I like reading the news. The news will tell me based on the headline, that's interesting. I'm interested in nuclear energy because there's not enough electricity in the grid to support these data centers for the AI. They all go together. You're a Navy guy, right? The Navy has been using nuclear to power their submarines for decades with zero fatalities, zero errors. I got my nuclear investment strategy and thesis from reading the news.
Yeah, it's wild when you think about it. If you think about the Navy bases that have submarines and aircraft carriers there could be upwards of 30 nuclear reactors sitting in one of these areas, and you'd have no idea. And actually,
you have no idea.
I actually learned
they're much
a lot
smaller,
about
they're
power
cleaner, they run more efficient.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, it's much safer than people think it is. Honestly, I don't see a future where we don't get to the point where we get this technology small enough to where it's going to power our cars one day. And we're going to sit here and you're going to buy a car, and that car is going to last you a lifetime because you're never going to have to replace it and you're never going to have to refuel it. It's insane. Appreciate that. And kudos you gave the podcast. That's awesome. It's always great when we have somebody.
Oh, you're amazing. You've been great. You've taught me a lot.
Oh, stop it. Thank you. I really do appreciate that.
Really?
But getting back to more important things like you and what you're doing, everything that you've shared so far has been absolutely amazing. Great golden nuggets, great wisdom, great takeaways that the listeners can take and say, hey, this is something I've been thinking about for a while. I'm not rushing into this. And maybe now I'm ready to take action. Maybe now this is something I want to do. And with that being said, maybe some of them are listening and say, hey, I'm interested in this Golden Visa fund that you're putting together. But with that said, Dan, where can people find more information about you? Do you have a website you can share with us? Any social media profiles we can follow, or any ads we can go read in the Beverly Hills Courier?
Yeah, there you go. I like it. The website's the easiest way to find out more about what we do. The name of the company is Global Investment Partnership, and the website is globalipllc.com. And that's on the real estate side. And then I'm still working with dealerships as a consultant on the consulting side. And that website is aimhighnow.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. You can just look Daniel Daly. You'll see all of my posts related to all the things we're talking about today. And I'm happy to answer DMs or emails. People reach out to me every day. I'm happy to help any way that I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to put those links in the show notes to make it easy for our listeners. But listeners, you guys know the drill. If you're driving right now, don't try to copy and paste or click it. Wait till you're in a safe place. But Dan, this has been absolutely amazing. And to close things out, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Get in the game, right? If you're thinking about getting in, don't try and time it. Don't think you can time the stock market. Don't think you can time the real estate market. Get in, weather the storm when it comes, because there will be storms, but you're better off being in than sitting on the sidelines watching the parade go by saying I should have.
I love
Get in the
that.
game.
I love that. That's fantastic. Don't sit on the sidelines. Don't watch the parade. Be a part of it. Start marching along.
That's it.
Even if your own parade, right? Put on a show. Let other people watch you do it. So
Absolutely.
awesome. Dan, this has
There you
been
go.
absolutely fantastic. I genuinely appreciate you taking the time to join us today, share your story, and share what you're doing. It's amazing what you've done in just a few years, right? It's not even like this has been a lifetime thing for you. You've done some amazing things in just the last 5 years. So I really want to point that out to the listeners right now. You got to take you got to take that first leap, right? You take that leap and then just keep it going. 5 years from now, who knows where you'll be, right? Who knows where you'll wind up? Dan's a perfect example of that. Again, absolutely awesome. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And hey, all of our listeners, I also want to thank all of you so very much, excuse me, for joining me and our special guest, Dan Daly, on the Average Joe Finances podcast. Go leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you liked about today's episode with Dan. Aloha from Hawaii, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.